Do we believe God has failed us if something we receive at some point in time is no longer as useful or resourceful as it once was? That's the question I want us to ponder over today in our study as we go through the book of First Kings chapter 17. We're going to hit just a few verses in this chapter. But as we go through this chapter, we're going to come back to that same question of mine and ask ourselves, do we believe God has failed us if something we received at some point in time is no longer as useful or as resourceful as it once was? And just in some practical examples, I mean, even something as simple as new clothing. So say you received new clothing. When you first received it, maybe you needed it. Maybe it was something that you just wanted, but you got it nonetheless. Now, at some point in time, you may outgrow those clothes. Those clothes may at some point in time become too small. When you wash them and you dry them, sometimes clothes shrink. Sometimes clothes fade, they deteriorate because of its cloth and the material of it. So point being, do you say to your clothes, do you say to your shirt, I've worn this shirt 20 times? And for some of you might say, well, I don't wear clothes that many times. If I buy a shirt, I'm going to wear it once or twice and that's it. But let me ask you this too, for you as well. For the ones who only wear their clothing only a few times or just have something you use it just a few times, if it's no longer useful to you, do you say at that point in time it was a failure? All right, so for those who have something that's still useful and you don't use it, now that's on you. But for us who say, well, okay, now, this shirt is faded, it's deteriorated, I can't wear it anymore. Do you sit there and say to yourself, because this shirt is fading, it's deteriorating, it's coming apart, that God has failed me now? Wasn't it useful to you at that point in time when you needed it? When you had it, it was at one point in time useful. So why do we call things, why do we look at things from such a negative light and want to point the finger at God and say, God, you're responsible for my failures. You're responsible for all the things and disappointments in my life that I wish were not present. You're responsible for all my unfortunate events and unfortunate experiences. Why do we blame God for those things? Let's look at this study here in 1 Kings 17. The title of this particular chapter, it says Elijah predicts a drought. I'm going to read from the English Standard Version. It says, Now Elijah the Tishbite in Tishbe in Gilead said to Ahab, As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, before whom I stand, there shall be neither dew nor rain these years, except by my word. And the word of the Lord came to him, Depart from here and turn eastward, and hide yourself by the brook Cherith, which is east of the Jordan. You shall drink from the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you there. So he went and did according to the word of God. He went and lived by the brook Cherith, that is east of Jordan. I'm going to pause at verse 5. Quick little recap here. So again, this was back when King Ahab was one of the kings, and Elijah the prophet told him that there wasn't going to be any more rain. God had been very patient with Israel and Judah both. I'm hoping that they will repent of their sins, turn from their wicked ways, and turn back to serving him as their one and only Lord. But their hearts were still deceived. They still had a lot of rebellion in their hearts, and they were still very rebellious in their actions. They did not turn back to the Lord. So God worked through his prophet Elijah to work through Elijah, and the punishment at this point in time would be a drought. A drought would come, and of course with the drought, crops don't grow, you don't have any water. It can be a very tough time when famine hits. But it says here that Elijah said that as the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, before whom I stand, there shall be neither dew nor rain these years except by my word. And the word of the Lord came to him and told him to depart. Depart from here, turn eastward and hide yourself in the brook Cherith. So Elijah received instruction from the Lord, and he went and did what the Lord had instructed. Okay, but look at this key point here in verse 4. It says, You shall drink from the brook, and I have commanded ravens to feed you there. So God had gave him a source for water and also gave him a source for food. How amazing is it that God went and used the ravens to feed the prophet Elijah, that he had ravens to bring him food. In verse 6, it says, And the ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. And after a while, the brook dried up because there was no rain in the land. So God told Elijah, he gave him his marching orders. He told him where to go. He said, when you go to this brook in Cherith, you're going to have water to drink from the brook. And I'm going to have ravens to bring you food and bring you bread and bring you meat in the morning and bring it to you in the evening. And then, of course, in verse 7, it says he drank the water from the brook. Now, in verse 7, coming back to our question we started at the beginning, where I asked, do we believe God has failed us if something we receive at some point in time is no longer as useful as it once was, or if something is no longer as resourceful as it once was? Because in verse 7, Elijah is kind of faced with that as well. In verse 7, it says, and after a while, the brook dried up because there was no rain in the land. Now, would you say to yourself that now because something is no longer as good as it was, then this is a curse? That this was never a blessing to begin with? Would you take a job and the job is beneficial to you at that point in time? It's beneficial for you and for your family. It provides for you. It gives you the things that you need. It does a lot of good for you. And say 5-10 years go by. And all of a sudden you say to yourself, you feel as though, maybe even for a while, that this job is not as beneficial as it once was. And your direction changes, or your perception changes, or even your passion may change. Would you say that was a waste of time? Absolutely not. We should not. We should say that at that point in time, the Lord provided. And the Lord will provide all the way up until maybe he'll have you change in direction. And if you change in direction, he'll still provide. We have to have faith that he'll still provide. Too many times when things change, when we go through changes of different circumstances or experiences, we'll say to ourselves, because change is coming, because things are not what they used to be, that maybe God doesn't love me, that maybe God doesn't have my back, maybe God is not going to bless me, maybe God is not blessing me at this point in time. And the truth to the matter is, it's all just a matter of faith. If he helped you then, why won't he help you now? If he helped you then, certainly he will help you now. For the Bible says that God is faithful. He is faithful. He is not like man who shall lie. He keeps his word. He does what he says he's going to do. And he works things out for the good of all those who loves him, according to Romans 8:28. So again, looking at Elijah, and of course what I want to focus on here again is he predicted a drought. And this famine was coming to punish those in the land. This was God's righteous punishment to those who chose to rebel against him. There would be famine. There would be sometimes pestilence. There would be droughts. There would be sometimes wars. Sometimes there would be different diseases that may come through the land and plagues that may come through the land and that may kill off a lot of people. And this was God's just punishment to those who rebelled against him. So as we're looking at how Elijah went through this situation, that again, with the bread and the water from the ravens and having the brook to have something to drink, God provided. And in verse 7 again, it says, after a while, the brook dried up. I believe when the well runs dry, we feel as though maybe everything before us or behind us was a waste of time. It was a wrong move. And I think we believe that every single time that we do ourselves a great injustice, and also we show God that maybe our faith wasn't true as we thought it once was. So here, again in verse 7, we will be in extreme error and allude to a severe lack of faith if when the well runs dry, we ask God, why must I experience this tragedy? Why must I endure this inconvenience? The Lord will direct us in life and we will hit patches where we believe the terrain is not meant for our crossing. But if God directs our steps, it is best that we walk and even run with joy and enthusiasm because he leads, and in that we should follow. In the drought, God is telling Elijah that he would turn an inconvenience into a raven that will bring him food each morning and every evening. How many wonderful and great things can God do with your discomforts and inconveniences? Now, you may say it was a great inconvenience for Elijah to have to travel and leave a place where there was already food and water and then go to a place and then once that famine came, when he said it would no longer rain. So when famine would come, now there's no water and food here. Say there's no water and food here, and God directs him to a different place. And now once he gets to that different place, God provides food and water there. We lose steps so many times during the process because we'll say, well, but what's going to happen next? You don't know. Nobody does. Only God knows what's going to happen next. And that's where faith has to kick in. Faith is living by faith. It's believing in God to do what he says he's going to do. not living by sight. When we live by sight, we're going to look at situations by our human eyes, by our mind, and say to ourselves, well, I can't see this working out. I can't see this happening. I can't see how this is going to play out. Well, that's the thing about it. You're not the author. You're not even the driver. You're just the passenger in the back seat. God is on the wheel. When you let Jesus do the driving, he'll get you to the destination. And all you got to do is, once you get to the destination, just get out of the vehicle and follow the instructions given to you and do what you have to do there. But too many times we want to be in the driver's seat, and we simply don't have that type of power. We simply don't have that type of control. See, even when we can't see a solution, God can usher one. When we don't know the answer, God has the best solution. God already knows what lies ahead of every direction. And that's more the reason why we say that God is a helper in the time of storm. I believe there's a Proverbs verse that says that God is our refuge, that he is a rock of safety. He's our rock that we can hide under. We even sing a song, it's called A Shelter in the Time of Storm, that God is a shelter in the time of storm. So the brook ran dry, and some would impose that the Lord had failed Elijah, because what was given, the water from the brook, was no longer able to be received at the time because it had dried up. But Elijah was blessed. So in your own time, I will allow you to read the rest of that chapter, verses 8 through 15, and going further, 17 through 23. And what's going to happen next is that God is going to direct Elijah to a different place. He's going to tell Elijah to go meet this widow, and his widow is going to provide food and water for Elijah. And in the process, Elijah is going to help strengthen her faith, and she'll be blessed for helping him. So when we continue to go through this story, we see that it's the gift that just keeps on giving, the blessing that just keeps on blessing. That faith in God is what got Elijah through. The well ran dry, and God pointed Elijah to a widow in Zarephath. And when he went, the widow provided him food, and the widow provided him something to drink. Now, if Elijah would have sat there in that brook and worried and said, well, okay, wow, I had water from the brook all to myself. I had ravens bringing me food. I had it real good. How can I go to another situation and still expect the same thing to be provided from God? How can it get better than this? But that's from a worldly aspect if you say it that way. If God is providing, God is providing. You never know where your help is going to come from. And that's the wonderful thing about how God works. You know, we talked about it before. Sometimes he works through people, sometimes through strangers, sometimes through friends, sometimes through relatives, sometimes through co-workers, sometimes through enemies. This God works in mysterious ways. And when we say that, what we're really saying is that God can bring a result about that we'll say we couldn't even see happening. Question. When the well runs dry, when one resource runs out, how often do we wait for God to provide? How often do we wait for God to provide? How patient are we? How patient have we been? How diligent are we to continue to ask and pray and ask the Lord to provide for us, and to actually wait for the deliverance, and not to take it into our own hands and try to force a solution that was never designed to fit in the first place? A few more verses I want to share with you. Proverbs 28:26, it says, he who trusts in himself is a fool, but one who walks in wisdom will be safe. Psalms 37 verse 5, commit your way to the Lord, trust in him, and he will do it. Matthew 16:24, then Jesus said unto his disciples, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Psalm 31:19, oh, how abundant is your goodness, which you have stored up for those who fear you and work for those who take refuge in you, in the sight of the children of mankind. God is our helper in a time of storm. There's a saying that to know God is to know his word, but to love God is to do what his word commands, to do what he says to do. In order for us to be able to benefit and to really be able to have a life and have it more abundantly as Jesus designed for us to have, we got to have faith, because God is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. So we got to have faith, and we have to believe, as the Hebrews verse says, that he will do the rewarding. We just got to have faith where it all comes from. We don't have control. We have to really understand and realize we don't have any control. We do have free will, but we do not have the power to control the things we think we can control. Even what we think we can control, most times we can't even control those things. You ever stop to think for a second? Some days you ever go outside, or when you're outside, you look up at the sky. Do you think to yourself sometimes that, wow, we're on this big blue ball on a spinning axis in the middle of nowhere? And if I'm not mistaken, I was told once before that if the earth was an inch closer to the sun, the earth would be too hot, it will burn up. If it was an inch farther away, it'd be too cold, we'll freeze. That we're just in the right spot in the galaxy, in the universe, and everything works just the way it should be, just right. You ever stop to think that if man could adjust it, if man can make an adjustment on our universe, what type of effect would that have? Do you think it'll be more beneficial, better than what it is now, or worse off? Look around at our world today. Man has the power to do things. We do have the ability to do certain things, but look at what we do have. We abuse it, we misuse it, we do harm unto others, we get selfish, only think about ourselves, and we put ourselves on a pedestal as if we don't even need God. But again, who can give life? Who can take life away? Man can kill the body, but only God can move the body and the soul to a destination. Only God can give an eternal body that will never fade, that'll never deteriorate, that'll never go away, that'll never die. So where he leads, I want to come back again and say that we must follow. We must be willing to allow God to work out our situations, to solve our problems, to give us solutions to our questions, to give us answers to the things that we seek. The Bible says to knock, to ask, to seek, and to knock, and the door will be open to you. The answer will be given. But in our knocking and in our seeking, don't become so vigilant in doing it your way. Don't become so vigilant in making a way. You know, there's a saying that where there's a will, there's a way. And to a certain extent, that's true. And to a certain extent, that's not. Where there's God's will, there's always a way. And with God's will, we got to have faith. Believe that if we trust in him, that he'll do what he says he'll do, and he'll actually do it. If God provides for the birds of the air, if he provides for the ants of the ground, if he provides for the animals at the bottom of the sea, he provides for animals that maybe man doesn't even really get to spend a lot of time with, don't even get to be seen, don't you think he'll provide for you? And now, he put man above animals. He put man to rule over the animals. He put man in a position of authority to be over all other creation. But how awesome is it to have a God who cares so much for us, who thinks so much of us, that he's willing to give up his very best so that we may be able to have an opportunity to live a life of eternal joy, a life of eternal privilege, a life of eternal praise, and just to be able to live in a time where there'll be no sorrows and pains, no discomforts or disappointments, no pain, no hurts, no tears. How awesome would that be? Now, how often do we think about that? Where he leads, we must follow.